Greetings. I'm Natasha Harrison with Community Build Ventures, and I hope you are enjoying the spring weather wherever you are in the world. I am looking outside my window near my desk and seeing the glorious sun shining. And so just feeling very joyous right now. And so just very grateful to be addressing you at this moment in time. Today, I want to center on the word Sankofa and how it is oh so important in disrupting, dismantling white supremacy, racism. And so I want to first start with sharing what is Sankofa. You might have heard this word before, but literally, Sankofa is a word that is in the language of the Akan people in Ghana, which is a country in Western Africa, in the continent of Africa. And Sankofa means return, go, look, seek, and take. Again, Sankofa means return, go, look, seek, and take. And it's an important word because it's about retrieval. It's about equipping yourself to retrieve that which has happened in the past, and it's so important to beef up your own knowledge. It is a word that really symbolizes the quest for knowledge, the quest for understanding, critical examination, and patient investigation. And so this important word is one of the key values at Community Build Ventures, because everything we do is rooted. Everything that we do, any engagement that we do with folks, is always examining the history, whether it's the history of the organization, the history of the issue that you are passionate about, that you're working in. It is so important for us to have the critical examination, the patient investigation, and be on a quest for knowledge to understand and to look back to see what we can take, right? That, we can look back and take and seek and like bring us forward to the current journey we on. We also use that word Sankofa because we know that what we're experiencing and doing now in this present, like you as a human being, what you're experiencing now and even doing is from the past, right? It is from the past, whether you acknowledge it or not. And even to the point where it's a genetic imprint on you, especially around racialized trauma or traumas, period. There have been scientific studies that if you are not on the journey of healing, you literally are passing down the trauma to later generations. I'll give you an example. A lot of times Black folks will joke around, you see a Black person running, you take off running. That is a genetic code that when we see another body that's similar to ours, because we know that it means our survival. And if they're running, I need to be running too. There's something there that is similar experience that I know that this person probably is experiencing. I'm not going to question it. I'm just going to take off running because it means our survival, right? And if we don't heal that which happened in the past, that experience, and take it now of that understanding, we'll continue to behave in the same way. So that's Sankofa. I'll leave that there. Again, Sankofa, return, go, look, seek, and take. So retrieval, critical examination, patient investigation, right? So the second piece is why history is so important. So I've been reading this amazing book. You probably look upside down, but it's called My Grandmother's Hands by Resma Menakem. And the book is a beautiful book. Overall, it's a beautiful book about healing racialized trauma and kind of mending our hearts and our bodies and understanding what's happening in your body due to racism, white supremacy. And I want to read one of his quotes that really resonated with me and really adds to our conversation regarding Sankofa. So his quote reads, "History matters, and an awareness of it puts our lives into context. A disdain for history sets us adrift and makes us victims of ignorance and denial. History lives in and through our bodies right now and in every moment. Okay, I'm going to read that quote again. History matters, and an awareness of it puts our lives into context. A disdain for history sets us adrift and makes us victims of ignorance and denial. History lives in and through our bodies right now and in every moment. And this quote really resonated with me because I often hear, and I would say, particularly white people say this, right? When we bring up um, the history of enslavement, the history, like all of those threads that really got us to this point where we're in this moment still in a very white supremacist culture, and racism is very present. So when I hear, this disdain for history sets us adrift and makes us victims of ignorance and denial. One of the things he also goes to say is that, when people say that's in the past, like, oh, we shouldn't go back, right? It really is a way to dodge what has happened and how it connects now. So when people say, "Oh, that's in the past," what you're saying to me, someone who's working, to dismantle, to disrupt, dismantle this thing that is so oppressive to every human being that lives in this country, and especially to Black, Indigenous people of color, is that when I hear you say that, you're telling me that what we're experiencing now has no connection to the past, and that what you're saying that happened then, that there should be no reconciliation, no truth and reconciliation, and no opportunity to heal. You're telling me that you don't want to heal. So instinctively, when anyone says that, I'm noticing that they don't want to heal. And they're not a grown up full human being either, right? We as grown ups, right, as adults, we face things, we contemplate, we analyze, we are curious, right? So you're also telling me that you no longer have that ability around curiosity, and no reflection of that point. And you're also telling me that you're a fragile human being when I know you're not, that you have resiliency in your body. But those are the things that you're telling me. And that history, when we our practice that we do all the time, when we really show the history and connection, people are like, oh, that's why. Oh, they did that, right? There are things that we can retrieve. There are things that are like that we can learn from, that we can examine, and or they're like, oh, why do we keep doing those same things? That didn't work before, or just all of the curious thoughts that come into play when you begin to, believe that history really matters. So again, the power, the beauty of Sankofa, for me during this moment in time of COVID, is that I have continuously looked at ancestors who lived through a pandemic, whether they were white or Black. Um, and I have also looked at my own ancestors in my family. I continue to look at key ancestors in my own life, my mother. People that know me know I love Harriet Tubman. She is an important ancestor that I constantly read about, get her words of like how she moved through the world, through so much, just the atrocities that were happening all around her at that time with people, with Black people in the enslavement. So I'm always digging deeper into Harriet Tubman. Um, and so, and honestly, these ancestors have really gotten me through to this season. We've had deaths in our family, non-COVID related. We've had family members that contracted COVID. Thankfully, that they did not transition. Also, friends and other friends who experienced great loss through this season, and with the inability to have the ceremony necessary. And I would say Sankofa has been an important tool for me, honestly, for my own sanity and my own self care, my own mental, spiritual self care. And so I want to offer three things on why history, why you should dig deeper and deeper into history, and why it's so important to begin to wrestle with those things that happened in the past. So just three things that that history really helps us do, and just reflecting about Sankofa. History activates the analysis and awareness, right? It really activates that part of our brain to really analyze, right? To really become aware. Awareness of, how have I been complicit in anti-Black racism? How have I been complicit in white supremacy? How have I been complicit in racism? Like having, those conversations. And I'll give you an example. I had the amazing pleasure of doing a session around workforce development with a partner of ours. And I went through the history of workforce development, even starting with at the early stages of this nation as colonies, and where there were white people and Black people that were working together on plantations that began to rise up collectively to protest the working conditions that they were experiencing on the plantation, to rise up against these wealthy or upper class or rich, whatever title, definitely above, well beyond the class of these folks that were working on these farms, on these plantations. And the powers that be decided to ingrain this style of white supremacy, that white is supreme, right? And that really disrupted the fight around workforce development, like workforce, conditions and working conditions, right? At the early stage, that the framework, the entire infrastructure, the systems, the institutions, all of that was a lot of that was born out of that time, white supremacy as we know it, right? So me knowing that history and how that connects now, thinking about workforce development, and you will see, like, also shared throughout the history of workforce development, there has been a lot of investment of training that just didn't work. And so why do we keep doing that, right? But what can we learn from that training? What can we learn from those movements for better working conditions of what happened, and how the powers that be through race and racism in the mix to disrupt those movements. In the 50s, turn of the century, 20th century, early, you talk about Carnegie, Rockefeller, those that had mass monopolies over things. Again, the white ethnic workers were like, hey, these conditions are horrible, and began to unionize themselves. But what they did was begin to recruit Black folks from the South that they could pay less to come up north to work in these jobs, to disrupt the union movements, right? To disrupt, using Black bodies once again to disrupt a movement. And so what can we learn from that, right? And that was one of the questions around, like, what can we learn from this push for, using Black bodies to disrupt social justice, honestly, and working conditions? And what can we learn about this push for training that has not been the solution to get America's workforce on par with the changing technologies, on par with the changing economy, right? So again, so much we can learn from that. Again, the first one, history activates the analysis and awareness, right? The second thing is history provides important things that we can retrieve and bring forward, right? So there's some things that we can go back and take forward, right? I'm going to give you an example. I did another session, wonderful session with Buy From a Black Woman. Shout out to Nikki Porche, Buy From a Black Woman, through their Black Woman Business Accelerator program. And I talked about Georgia Gilmore as they're thinking about, so how can I make social impact with my business? Georgia Gilmore literally fed, she literally fed and funded a movement. She helped to fund the Montgomery bus boycott. And she could cook, right? I can, reading about her history, I could just taste her food. Like they just talk about how good her food was. um and, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., talked about how good her food was, and even to the point where he helped support her to create her own restaurant and catering business. But before that, again, she was a cook, she was a chef, and she got all these other folks that knew how to cook, who were chefs, and they would sell these amazing plates of food. And they actually, her group actually fundraised the most amount of money towards the movement, right? She used her gifts and talent. She could cook. That's what she knew how that she can do. And so we take that information of like, I have a talent, I have a gift. How can that move that forward, right? Learning from the life of Georgia Gilmore to help support a movement, to help support my community. So again, number two, history provides important things that we can retrieve and bring forward. And the third and last thing is that history helps us to begin to heal racialized trauma. Point blank, as Resma Menakem um, so eloquently stated, is that when we confront and reconcile, we can heal those things so that we aren't passing that stuff down to the next generation. It expands our empathy and compassion, right? If we know the full truths. I think one of the most profound books that I've read recently that really expanded my compassion and my empathy was Slavery by Another Name, in which it chronicles the history of enslavement in the US, that it continued well into, honestly, the year I was born, into the 70s, right? And so it just opened up my heart to, um honestly, black, my people here in Georgia. I'm born and raised in Georgia, but I also, on my mother's side, my people come from Tennessee. And so it just expanded my empathy and compassion around, at any moment, right? Like I could be walking down the street, and because I don't have a job, I'm considered a vagrant, which was against the law, and I could get locked up. Like that is just, I just can't imagine, right? And so it just opened me up to, um one, like there has been some slow progression, but also like this idea of how we think about enslavement now is still going on, right, in our prison systems, right? And how that history is still, it manifested in a different way now, right? It manifested in a different way. It transforms and said it's going to be this now in order to enslave Black bodies, right? And other people of color, right? And so it just expanded that. And then also, it helps us to fully examine how we are complicit in racism, to just be better advocates and allies. Like once it's like, oh wow, so that's the history of the welfare system. Oh well, it really wasn't for Black people. Oh, okay. Like it begins to give you more clarity, and it helps you settle in. And then again, the healing process comes because there's the truth. And as human beings, we really need the truth, and we need to really reconcile with that and really have a place of, so what do I do with this information? How can I support my community? How can I be a better advocate and ally? Because those things, because we're all connected as human beings, help all of us to heal. And so, again, Sankofa, it is such a beautiful, I'm so very grateful for the Akan people in West Africa, of just that genius, term that has resonated so much with me, and just so very thankful for that. And so again, I would love to hear, like, one, how are you, using history? How are you talking about history? How you're leaning into history in your own self-awareness. So look forward to getting your feedback, and learning more from you. Thank you so much. Take care.